Our last day visiting Nazareth, we loaded our 50-passenger coach bus, and those on the group all piled in as we worked our way towards the base of Mount Tabor. Once we got to the base of the mountain, our big bus could not go any higher, so we had to unload and to get on smaller buses close to the size of our new All Saints one. And then we began to ascend up the mountain. There were several cutbacks and hairpin turns, and it seemed that the drivers had great pride in seeing how fast they could take each turn. And as I started looking around at some of the other tourists who were on the bus with us, that they began to lower their heads and to say a prayer, I think in fear if we would make it to the top of the mountain. But how fitting it was to see some prayerful folks as we were making our way to the Church of the Transfiguration, the story which we hear today in the Gospel. Mount Tabor is 6 miles from Nazareth, although if we imagine Jesus making this journey on foot, it would be quite treacherous. All of these groups have come from all over the globe to this mountain as we visited together that day, hearing different languages, seeing different aspects of the Christian faith. We went to the place where Jesus prayed. We went to a place where Jesus encountered God. Like a lot of the churches that I found in the Holy Land, it is run by Franciscans who have a very tight schedule about which groups go into the church, when, and how long. And so we waited our chance to go in, and when we did, above the altar was this wonderful depiction of the Transfiguration, with Jesus in the middle and Moses and Elijah on the side, and then off to the corner, the sleep-deprived disciples, Peter and James and John. Jesus speaking with Moses, the man of the law, and Elijah, the great prophet who would help to welcome in the new Messiah. And we see there in this moment the importance of prayer and how it's through prayer that it welcomed God's voice into their hearts and into this story we hear today. As I walked into the church, I could see at the high altar that there's a Catholic Mass that's taking place, and I'm pretty excited because it's the first Mass I've seen in all of these churches where they're speaking in English. So I understood what was taking place. And there's that great yearning inside of me to be able to come and to find a place in a pew and to come up and to receive the bread, but it was just for that group. But it made me think of the disciples who are off to the side observing this scene taking place. They're not invited to necessarily come and to be a part of it, but they're just simply watching it unfold before their eyes. Right before they have gone to this mountain, Jesus has already received the correct response from Peter. Who do you say that I am? And Peter has answered, you are the Messiah. In this accurate response of being the Messiah, there is great hope in confirmation that Peter will be the one, the leader of the disciples that will carry them on. But what is he going to do? What are those disciples going to do after they experience this great transfiguration? I think it's what we're always called to do, to wait, to see. Now, as Peter, being the leader and speaking quickly in the moment of wanting to build these 3 dwellings, God interrupts with that distinctive voice of saying, this is my son. And it's not so much to shun Peter's request, but it's to help him to understand he's still thinking and believing in a human mindset. There actually is a Jewish festival called the Festival of the Booths, where they celebrate Moses' Exodus story. And James and John are sitting there watching this, thinking, this is what we should do. We should build these dwellings. This is how you commemorate such an occasion, as Moses is there and Elijah, but more importantly, God himself. The divinity of Christ has been placed into their faith. In a very short time, they're going to descend down from this mountain and go up to the mountain where Jesus will be killed. And the message that Jesus has given them during all this time will be placed on their shoulders to go out and to share. And we give thanks, for we still hear this message today, 2,000 years later. We still remember all of the glory that they witnessed and shared with others. The Church of the Transfiguration was a beautiful place, but there are many beautiful churches there. And I remember walking out of the main sanctuary, and a friend came over to me and said, "Do you want to see something funny?" And of course I said, "I always like to see something funny." And he pointed out that they had 2 chapels on each side of the main church. One chapel was for Moses and one was for Elijah. You see, at the end, humans still built the 3 dwellings. We just can't help ourselves. And it made me laugh myself, because I've always used this opportunity to preach about Peter's downsides, how he missed the mark again. But I understand the gospel in a new light. I think that there is an invitation to take a piece of that mountaintop experience with them. Not to come down from the mountain and say, that was a nice experience, it's over, and now I'm just going to get back to my daily life. But to take that moment of awe with them into their hearts, and to continue to pray and to live into that moment and wait and see how God will take that moment that they have shared and will speak to them in God's time to come. That they can't manage the expectation to use it right away, but in God's time, that moment, if they keep it alive in their heart, they keep that mountain in their heart, then they will know the words to share. We hear in Peter's letter today how he kept those words, how he remembered that moment on the holy mountain, and it's preparing Peter for his death that he knows is to come very soon. For he will be crucified himself for being a message of good news out in the world that he walked with. So as you know, today marks the end of my trip to Mount Tabor and to all these wonderful experiences that I had in the Holy Land over this past 3 weeks, following the footsteps of Jesus. Going to places and pausing to say, Christ walked here. Christ prayed here. Christ was crucified here. But it also reminds me of all the great moments of exploring Legoland and Richmond and going to camp with my boys. So my prayer for myself is how to take all those moments and to continue to lift them up in my own life and wait and see how God will use it to help shape me, to help transform me, knowing that it's not going to happen in the blink of the moment like we hear in the story, that it's not going to happen on my own timetable as we desire to manage those outcomes right then and there, but to keep the peace, to hold the peace, to remain on those mountains. As we come to the end of summer, I imagine many of you have had your own moments experienced with others. Moments where you take lots of pictures and you feel yourself removed from your daily life and you feel energized and you feel loved and you feel like that you're in this thin place that does so much for your body and for your soul. Carry it with you. Hold on to it. Lift it up in prayer as a thanksgiving in your life. and wait and see how God will take that moment when the time is right for God to then help transform you in a new way, that you live your common life, that we live our daily walk, so that we recognize God is always breaking into our lives, always giving us the substance that will help us to be a new creation for God's message of love. We take the words of God on that mountain and we listen to the voice of Jesus. Jesus, help guide us, help awaken us, help us to hold on to those moments of good, and most of all, help us to wait and see what you will do with us. Amen.